Okay, great. Well, hello everyone. My name is Sanjini Nanayakara, and I'm a USAID project lead at the National Renewable Energy Lab in the US. Welcome, and thank you everyone for being here at the Asia Clean Energy Forum side event workshop titled The Future of E-Mobility in Asia, Goals, Challenges, and Holistic Solutions. Today, we have a great lineup of panelists. We will share the goals, regional experiences, technical knowledge, and country-specific examples about electric mobility in Asia. This event is divided into three main segments. In the first segment, our panelists will set the stage for understanding the role in EVs in Asia, and then we will follow up with a panel discussion and end with the open Q&A period. So to start off, I would like to briefly introduce our panelists. As you can see in this first slide, these are all our panelists. And please note that if you need more details about their work experience, it can be found on the event information sheet. So Marusha Kadama. Actually, first I want to introduce USAID project specialist Rashane Nagam, Sala-Ngarm, Marusha Kadama of Slowcat, Abhishek Ranjan, Vice President of BSES Ranjani Power Limited in India, Mod Sharul Nizam bin Sarib, Chief Technical Officer, Malaysia Automotive Robotics and Internet of Things Institute, and Shayla Napoleon, Assistant Secretary, Department of Transportation, Philippines, and Glenda Bathan Batarina, Deputy Executive Director of Clean Air Asia. And to start off, I would like to invite Rashane Sala-Ngarm, a project management specialist in the Energy and Infrastructure team in USAID's Regional Development Mission in Asia, to give opening remarks. Rashane?
Thank you, Sanjini. Yes, so good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on wherever you're dialing in from. Yes, it is an honor to welcome you to this exciting side event on the future e-mobility in Asia, goals, challenges, and holistic solutions. On behalf of U.S. Agency for International Development, let me thank ADB for hosting the 16th Asia Clean Energy Forum. I also want to thank our co-organizers, the Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport, or Slowcat, and of course the U.S. Department's Energy, the Department of Energy's NREL, and National Renewable Energy Laboratory for their support in holding this event. So we're here today to understand electric vehicle deployment trends in Asia, country priorities and challenges to scale up in deployment. In terms of global transportation emissions, under business as usual conditions, emissions from the transport sector in Asia are expected to rise faster than other parts of the world. In a region with rapidly growing emerging economies, it is imperative to link decarbonization strategies with development goals, enabling economies to transition and thrive using low carbon options in the transportation sector. Additionally, Southeast Asia is feeling the effects of climate change. For example, according to the German Watch Environmental Group, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam are among the top 10 countries in the world to be affected by climate change. Hotter weather, which you probably can feel, or if I'm based in Bangkok, so it's been pretty hot the last month or so. This hot weather will push malaria and dengue fever more north to countries like Laos, PDR, where they're currently less prevalent. If we continue this business as usual scenario, ADB projects that 11% of the region's GDP will be wiped out by the end of the century. So obviously, the region needs to adapt to this new climate scenario, as well as adapt development strategies with cleaner technologies. USAID has been supporting the region in the EV deployment for some time now, and those supports include a virtual course providing Southeast Asia transport and energy sector stakeholders with the technical capacity and knowledge to support countries like Indonesia, Laos, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam in their efforts to increase EV deployment. USAID provided capacity building for Laos PDR Ministry of Energy and Mines on EV supply equipment codes and standards, and tariff design to support EV charging infrastructure business models. And also recognizing the interest and the need of the robust, timely, and high-quality information on electric vehicles in Asia and globally, USAID recently launched the EV Toolkit on the Greening the Grid platform and a new guide called Building Blocks of Electric Vehicle Deployment, a guide for developing countries. You'll hear more about this guide in the upcoming session. So now to effectively decarbonize the transport sector, we need greater regional technical cooperation, coordination within the region, along with knowledge exchange and peer learning. In addition, much technical knowledge is needed to understand how EV deployment is linked with the power sector and the built environment to be able to design equitable policies and solutions. So in this workshop, we'll speak with regional experts and country leaders with these goals in mind. We will learn about regional trends in EV deployment, country examples, current status, goals and challenges, and opportunities for partnerships and peer learning across the region as well. I believe regional cooperation across the region to deploy new technologies in holistic and equitable manner and with forward-thinking policies will enable us to progress towards zero emissions in the transport sector in the region. In closing, I hope this workshop stimulates discussions, new ideas, and fruitful partnerships. I wish you all a successful event, and thank you for your participation and dedication towards eliminating the emissions from the transport sector in Asia. Thank you. Over to you, Sanjini.
Thank you, Rashane. And now I would like to call on Marusha Kadama. She's the Secretary General of the Slowcat Partnership. And Marusha will start her presentation and guide us through this event. She's our facilitator for today. Thank you, Marusha.
Thanks very much to both of you. It's really a pleasure to be here. Rashane, Sanjini, really to have the opportunity of sharing this space with the wonderful panelists that you've put together. And certainly good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you are based, the beauty of these online events. And I wanted to get started perhaps with helping us set a bit the tone of what are the global trends and the opportunities we are seeing in the development of electric vehicles before going afterwards to my fellow panelists and giving you all the opportunity of enjoying the richness of different perspectives they are bringing. So let's get started. Perhaps Sanjini, next slide then. Let me just take the opportunity of telling you briefly what Slowcat is, in case you don't happen to know who we are. We are the international multi-stakeholder partnership that enables collaborative knowledge and action for sustainable low-carbon transport and brings the voice of this movement into the climate and sustainability processes that happened amongst different countries of the world. We gather a very rich multi-stakeholder base that consists of transport associations, NGOs, knowledge and academia entities, UN system, multilateral organizations, and so on and so forth. And we focus primarily on land transport with a footprint always targeted towards the global south. Next slide, please. And I thought that it would also be important to give you a bit of a hint, isn't it, of what it is the Low Emissions Development Strategies Global Partnership, the Let's GP, in which we are operating today and kindly being hosted. And I just wanted to let you know that Slowcat has got the honor of co-leading the Transport Working Group and the activities based on the global and the Asian efforts. And we do that in proud co-leadership with Sustenta, with NREL, with ICLE, and with Libellula. Perhaps also important to note that the efforts of this working group happen at 3 different levels, if you want. A first level, that it's the global efforts, which are very much about sharing knowledge and disseminating what it's done through the Let's Transport toolkit. And at the regional level, what we're doing is very much focused on peer-to-peer learning activities that are actually trying to cater for the needs of the participants. And at the local level, what the working group does is offer technical support, very much the notion of TA, technical assistance and technical support through the climate help desk. And some examples of what it's done at that local level is reviewing planning documents or scoping and analysis. Next slide, please. Let's take a moment now to put a bit into context some of the, if you want, the key facts and figures of this global overview on e-mobility. The first message I wanted to leave with you is that actually the electric passenger car stock, both of battery and plug-in electric hybrids, has surpassed the 10 million over the past year in 2020, while at the same time the conventional petrol and diesel cars are seeing a huge decline. As in previous years, China, Europe, and the US continue driving this growth of electric cars. Interesting to note the extent to which Norway has recorded this increase. Is basically 69% of what was sold in the first half of 2020 in the Norwegian market was very much plug-in hybrid and battery electric. And when we go to Asia, important to note that there is 5 million electric passenger cars on the roads in Asia, which is an incredible increase of 85% compared to 2018. But we also need to bear in mind that, for instance, in the case of China, all motorcycles have been electric for over a decade or so now. Next slide, please. If you are wondering about what is it that the different jurisdictions at the national and at the local level are doing, there's very good news, actually. Over 2020, we have seen very important developments with countries and cities setting specific targets to phase out the internal combustion engine and really fast track the penetration of electric vehicles. We have 63 countries with those targets, 19 national entities, and at least we are aware of 11 cities and subnational entities which have also set targets in this direction. We'd like to draw your attention, for instance, to Japan, that is setting that 2050 target, to Taiwan and Sri Lanka with a 2040 target, and cities like Seoul, the Jeju Island, or the Han Island, so the subnational entities that I was talking about, with targets being set, for instance, as soon as 2035 or even 2030. Next slide, please. Another important element that I would like to leave with you is a few facts and figures about electric buses and how their popularity is doing. As of 2018, approximately 7% of the buses that we see globally are using fully electric, and another 8% are hybrid. There's over 400 cities in the world that have deployed this type of buses, and actually we can say that over 500,000 of vehicles have been manufactured since as of March 8, 2021. And what we do see is quite a geographical difference, isn't it? An asymmetry in the sense that China operates 95% of the world's electric buses. The remaining shares are largely shared between North America and Europe, and in comparison, Latin America has got less than 1% of the global, and Africa is very underrepresented in this panorama. Important to note as well that there is 60 Indian cities that are specially identified to roll out electric bus fleets in the coming years, thanks to a specific program that the Indian authorities had put in place. Next slide, please. And now, if you want, two last slides about a bit of a general reflection. So we don't all think that e-mobility can be a silver bullet, and we actually try to understand the importance of placing e-mobility in a wider and bigger context of sustainable low carbon mobility, in the idea that we should be actually aiming at avoiding the need for unnecessary motorized trips, while of course ensuring that everybody has access to mobility. We should also be shifting to more sustainable modes. And last but not least, we should certainly be improving vehicle efficiency, vehicle design, fuel efficiency, and operations efficiency. And we should be doing it in this order, isn't it? Guaranteeing that this is the hierarchy of the strategies that we are using. If we place e-mobility in this context, what we should be really aiming at is at ensuring that e-mobility can be put at the service of intermodality. Next slide, please. And some of the last thoughts that I wanted to leave with you is very much what are some key opportunities that we would have for e-mobility in this notion of sustainable transport. I think that 2- and 3-wheelers are really an important focus here. We have seen that around 25% of motorized 2- and 3-wheelers by 2020 are electric now. We have seen as well how China has migrated entirely to e-bikes. We are seeing as well how India, the program I was talking about, is looking into electrifying rickshaws and two-wheelers. And we also know that the electrification of two-wheelers, for instance, in Vietnam, promises a big return in terms of reduction of CO2 emissions. We should never forget either about collective transport, whether we want to call it public transport or differently, in the notion that in many countries it's not necessarily just a formal public transport, but it's also paratransit. And I am saying this in the idea that we don't want to continue in the very, very important private motorization rates that we have seen in the past century, with all the implications on congestion, on inequality, on CO2 emissions, on air pollution, and so on and so forth. Another element of opportunities for e-mobility is also the freight transport. We shouldn't just be talking about passengers. As we know, freight demand is just increasing and will just continue increasing. The combination of global supply chains and also the combination, of course, of the demand of e-commerce. In that moment, it will be very important perhaps to look at a combination of electrified rail and road for long haul distances, for instance. And last but not least, we will be absolutely missing the real turning point of mobility if we were not to combine e-mobility and renewables in one hand. It's very important to understand that in 2017, 95.9% of global transport energy needs were met by oil and petroleum products, with very small proportions being met by biofuels, something like 3%, and renewable electricity, something like 0.3%. So it is really an imperative that we move hand in hand electrification of transport and renewables. That is really where the potential of socioeconomic transformation lies in different geographies across the world. So I'm going to stop it here. Thanks very much for listening to this introduction. And this is the moment where I would really love to go to my fellow panelists. Let's remember some of the, if you want, the questions that we had in our backdrop to try to respond here. To what extent the electrification of vehicles across different modes is going to interact with the built environment and with the electricity sector? And what are the economic impacts and the opportunities that are behind this electrification of the different modes? How can countries make equity a priority and not just the luxury e-vehicle? How can transitions to e-mobility be incorporated in the longer term planning of both transport and the power sector? What are the policies, the incentives? How do we make the best use of these recovery packages for post-pandemic to really help us unleash the potential? These are some of the questions that my fellow panelists are going to try to help us unpack over the next few minutes. And we're going to get started with Callie Johnson, who, as Sanjini introduced, is Senior Transportation Market Analyst in NREL. And Callie is going to help us a bit understand some of the basics of electric vehicles, isn't it? The technology trends, the different building blocks to really develop EVs. Over to you, Callie, please.
Thanks so much, Marusha. Sanjini, can we have the next slide? So Marusha already explained a lot of these vehicle technology trends. I'll just fill in a couple more items. So the International Energy Agency also puts together some pretty good summary statistics of what's going on in the electric vehicle market. Overall, as Marusha explained, the new registrations increased in 2020. That's despite COVID-19 and an overall drop in light-duty vehicle purchases from gasoline and diesel. Norway has the highest share of EV sales. And so what you see in this chart along the left-hand axis are the thousands of vehicles purchased. Those are the bars. And then it's interesting to look at on the right-hand axis is the percent of electric car sales. And that's what those dots are. And so you can see that the European Union has really taken off in 2020. China still has the largest stock of vehicles because it's been selling electric vehicles for longer. It's been selling substantial numbers for longer, so it still has the largest stock, although Europe has really taken off. And then you can see on the bottom the specific European countries that are really taken off, with Norway leading the way in the sales share. So it's kind of interesting to look into some of those countries and think of what they're doing that is catalyzing the market so well. Over 90% of the vehicle stock is light passenger vehicles, with the remainder split between buses and light commercial vehicles. And there are very few heavy-duty trucks being sold so far. However, those sales grew 10% in 2020. So that market is just starting off, but growing quickly. There are now 370 electric vehicle models now available. So there's a nice wide variety, meeting more and more people's needs. The range, which was previously a limitation for electric vehicles, increased a lot, and now it seems to be plateauing around 350 kilometers. It seems to be meeting most people's needs. Next slide, please. So at NREL, we've written the building blocks of EV development for USAID, and that is the cover of it on the right-hand side. It's organized along 7 building blocks. The first is setting targets, developing incentives to achieve those targets, data management, grid planning and management, charging infrastructure, workforce development, tariff design, and EV standards and communication. And so that's going to outline the remainder of my slides today. Next slide, please. So for the goals and target of EV deployment, you target specific vehicles and vehicle types depending on what goals you have. So for example, if you want to improve urban air quality, you target motorcycles, which Marusha explained are doing quite well, probably because they disproportionately help urban air quality in terms of per the amount of petrol that they save. They really reduce your local air pollution as well, because their onboard emissions reduction systems aren't as good as on larger vehicles, because they, for the most part, don't have the space for it, and they don't designate the money towards the emissions reduction systems that larger vehicles do. And then, of course, buses really help because you're displacing quite a few individual vehicles with just one vehicle. If you want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions or petroleum use for energy security or trade balance, the privately loaned light-duty vehicles are good to target because there's so many of them and they use a lot of gasoline. If you're wanting to achieve life cycle cost savings, if that's your foremost goal, some of the best fleets are taxis and transportation network companies. That's like Uber and Lyft, because they drive so many miles per year that they pay themselves off. They pay off that upfront investment more quickly. If you're wanting to reduce traffic congestion, it's good to get more people onto buses, and to do so, help that first last mile link through microtransit and motorcycles, because motorcycles can fit more vehicles into the same amount of road space. Next slide, please. So for data collection and management, there's some important key pieces of data that help you determine what the best levers are and where the best place in your transportation system is to use electric vehicles. These first 3 we consider the fundamental pieces of transportation data: the transportation fuel use, how many gallons of petrol or diesel your transportation system is using, the vehicle stock, basically your vehicle registrations, and your vehicle kilometers traveled. This chart shows the purpose, how you can use these pieces of vehicle, what sources there are, probable keeper. I've simplified these as ministries, regardless of what their the actual entity's name may be, and kind of a backup place for where this data may be stored. It's also good to know the mode of travel, such as, are people using individually owned vehicles? Are they carpooling? Are they taking buses more? What their access is to home charging, what the gasoline price is in your country, the electricity tariffs, drive cycle profiles, geospatial data. You can figure out a lot by mapping things out in GPS and deciding where the EVSEs, the chargers, need to go, and things like that. And then, of course, as Marusha said, the electricity generation fuel mix, how much of your electricity is generated through renewables is quite important as well. Next slide, please. And as you're establishing a network of charging infrastructure, it's really important to keep in mind that a lot of people, most people prefer to charge at home. So keep that in mind as you're building out the infrastructure. And also workplace charging is incredibly convenient, and it's both home and workplace are nice because the vehicles are plugged in a good portion of the time. In the US, vehicles are parked at least 90% of the time. So that provides a really nice flexible load that potentially you can time the charging when it's convenient for your grid. And then, of course, you need public infrastructure. We have level 1, which is slow, level 2, which is faster, and then DC fast chargers, which are very fast, where you can get an 80% charge in half an hour. So you want to strategically locate these in order to reduce range anxiety. And it's important to know that if you strategically locate them and people drive by public stations, that makes them more likely to purchase electric vehicles too, because in the back of their mind, they think, oh, I can drive to my favorite beach location because I saw a charging station there. And then, of course, you want fleet chargers that can be strategically located to keep a fleet cycling along their regular routes quite well. Next slide, please. It's good to consider what standards and communications protocols you want to put in place to make sure that ideally all of your EVSEs, which are chargers, can be used by all of the vehicles. And so the charging standards are the requirements for the connections of the EV to the grid and to the vehicle. The equipment should be certified by companies such as the underwriters laboratories to make sure that they meet certain standards, and then installation codes need to be followed. On the right-hand side, you have a few of the examples of the different couplers throughout the world that you can see that if you drive a vehicle, you don't want to face all these different couplers and go up to them and not be able to plug into some. So you want to make sure that the vehicles are coordinated with the right coupler. Next slide. Grid planning and management. You want to manage it temporally. So basically over time, you want to match it with your generation and with your grid load. And you also want to manage it spatially. You want to make sure that that your load is going ideally under feeders and sections of the grid that might be under capacity, or added to sections of the grid where you can increase the capacity at the right time, and hopefully for less expensive in certain sections of the grid. So you want to keep that in mind, both temporally and spatially. Next slide, please. So tariff design, as I mentioned, most EVs have charge time flexibility, which makes them good recipients of time of use tariffs to encourage them to charge off-peak, and demand response rates. The government's commonly intervene between electric utilities and EVSE owners, and it's good to keep in mind that demand charges, that charge per peak kilowatt, can really hurt the economics of DC fast chargers. So in quite a few countries, they are finding alternatives to demand charges for electric vehicles. And then finally, allowing customers to couple EVSE and a facility behind 1 meter enables them to control their own timing and minimize the impact of demand charges. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to mention the workforce development. This is an estimate of anticipated types of jobs with electromobility when electric vehicles are commonplace. In maintenance of the vehicles is the biggest one here. You also have fairly large ones under battery cell manufacturing and installation of the EVSE. So that's my time, and I'll hand it back to you, Marusha.
That was excellent. Thank you so very much, Kelly. I mean, you've really set those building blocks so nicely, isn't it? From the importance of really choosing the priorities for that planning and that policy making, how you make that great correlation between the types of vehicles and the goals that want to be met, and certainly how you make the emphasis on the granularity of the data that is collected, you know, how important that granularity is needed, passing through the standards, the grids, and I love how you finish with this note about the fact that electrification of transport can actually be a net job creator. And probably that's a story that we need to tell better and that we need to prepare better for, isn't it, in terms of the skills we generate. So thank you so much, really, truly appreciate it. A phenomenal crash course on the EV basics, absolutely. And now we're going to go on a bit of a journey with 3 country examples. And we're going to be starting with India by the hand of Abhishek Ranjan, who is the Vice President of BSES Rajani Power Limited India. And we're going to try to explore a bit the impacts on the grid, isn't it? So Abhishek, over to you, please.
Thank you, Marusha. Am I audible clearly?
Loud and clear, and we can see you very well as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, and anywhere in the world where you are logging in from. I am from New Delhi, India, and working with a DSO named as BSES Rajani Power Limited in New Delhi, which is capital city of India. In the next few slides, I'll talk about the grid impacts and how we are managing it in the city of New Delhi. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of what is happening here in India in the transportation space. We see the energy requirement, almost 18% of the energy requirement, and mostly we are importing through oil, is for the transportation, equivalent of 94 million ton of equivalent of oil at present. And at business as usual kind of thing, it is going to rise to about 200, almost double by 2030. You talk about the emissions, this is responsible, the transportation sector is responsible for about 142 million tons of carbon dioxide per annum. And more than 85% is from the road transport itself. Now, electric mobility, the share of it is very, very minuscule today, 1%, less than 1%. However, the government of India and also the various states in the Delhi, including Delhi, we have announced our electric vehicle policy. For example, Delhi says we will be at least 25% of the new vehicle sales or registrations by 2024 should be battery electric vehicle, BEVs. And there has been a very, very strong policy push both at the federal level and the state levels. For example, the government of India's Go Electric campaign, which was inaugurated in February this year, FAME 2 policy, which is providing subsidies to the new battery electric vehicles, the chargers as well. State EV policies and incentives, not only for the new vehicles, but also the scrapping incentive for environmental friendly way of scrapping the older vehicles, because there has to be a circular economy. So the state EV policy of Delhi, for example, was announced in August 2020. Similarly, more than 10 states in India, they have already announced it. So there is a very aggressive policy push for the both public and private EV charging infrastructure. Yesterday only we have approved, the government of Delhi has approved rollout of the private charging infrastructure within homes or within semi-public places like malls, offices, hotels, hospitals, etc., which would be facilitated by the DSOs with their empaneled vendors. So it's like you call up the DSO and, hey, I want a charger at my home. So we give you a metered connection along with an EVSE, which is hardwired to it. So it's just like an EV charging service on call. Very recently, I think it was this month only, National Program of Advanced Chemistry Cell, ACC battery storage has been announced by the Government of India with a view to promote production of the battery within the country. And therefore, that is the aim is to reduce the cost, and thereby it is going to have an impact, positive impact on the e-mobility rollout as well as stationary storage market. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of how the demand or the load curve looks like. The blue color curve is nothing but a daily load curve of this year, 9th of June, when Delhi experienced the peak load of the season. If you see, the demand is going even around 6,300 megawatt in the night, around say 2,300 hours in the night. And we have two peaks. One is the day and the night peak, and night peak is peak here. So we have a lot of valley filling opportunities in the green part of it, which you say that it's the ideal time for the EV charging, because the assets are loaded on the lower side. This is the system curve, and the asset loading curve is also nearly same. I mean, it mimics the system load curve. Whereas if you see the solar, the rise of the solar actually generation on a daily basis is actually coinciding with the rise in the load. It is following the load actually. Load following characteristic is there for the solar, and therefore it is very important for us in terms of Delhi. Whereas in the evening hours, the period from say 8 p.m. till say 1 a.m. during the summers is a time where we would like to avoid generic EV charging, because there is a lot of pressure on the grid, and we can avoid these 4 hours, and barring these 4 hours, other 18 hours especially we can do so. So next slide, please. So this is a snapshot from the study that we did with the help of the USAID. NREL did the study for us, and the report has been published last year in July, that is July 2020. The top curve, the two curves speak about the impact of the EV charging on the distribution transformer loading. The left hand side you can see is valley filling approach, where in the valleys the EV are charging, whereas during the peak hours it's exactly coinciding, or it may be even increasing the load, because sometimes EV charging is piggyback on the already evening peak or the day peak, for example. But when we clubbed it with the BESS, that is battery energy storage system, we found out that the value filling opportunity is more lucrative for charging the battery as well as charging the EV. Whereas during the peak hours, the peak loading of the distribution transformer is reduced because the batteries are being used to discharge. And this we were able to demonstrate. We are actually doing this project and implementing it in the city of Delhi, and next month we expect to commission 6 of such units, the DT level battery energy storage, along with the EV charging system. So the bottom left part, if you see, there is increase in the efficiency with the managed EV charging, along with the battery energy storage coupled with it. So if you see the right hand side, this is showing in the red color. If you see the peak and the maximum EV charging is going to take a toll on the loading of the network. The red colors show that it is getting overloaded. If you can hit the mouse, please, it will come up with a second animation. Sanjini? Yeah. Now, if you see this slide, DT loading with high EV penetration, along with the battery energy storage, this red color has transformed to blue. So that's what came out of the results, that if you're coupling the charging of the battery electric vehicle along with the battery energy storage, so definitely during the peak hours, actually you can use the battery energy storage either to charge the vehicle or meet the load, either way. So therefore, there is a less demand from the or import from the grid. You can click the mouse, please. So managed EV charging along with the battery energy storage integration at the distribution level or distribution transformer level increases the efficiency of the DTs. So that is also very, very important to note, because we don't have to add more and more infrastructure. We can use the existing infrastructure to charge the electric vehicle and absorb as many of them without causing a tariff burden on the end consumer as well, and also to have without any adverse impact on the loading as well as losses in the transformer. And click the next button, please. So this is another study which was done by IIT Delhi, IIT Delhi and IIT Kanpur basically. You see this blue curve is nothing but a load curve of Delhi, whereas in year 2025, using these assumptions, in India, for example, two-wheeler are the most important in numbers in terms of the electric vehicles or non-electric vehicles also today. There is an assumption that by 2025, 25% of the two-wheelers would be electric, so which is about 2.6 million in this simulation study that was done last year. Three-wheeler electric constitute about 0.16 million. 15% of the four-wheelers are expected to be electric, that is about 0.67 million vehicles. Heavy capacity vehicles, 5% of them would be electric, that is lesser, about 10,000. And 90% of the charging of two-wheeler is happening overnight. So with these assumptions, if you see, there is an increase in the loading of the DTs during the valley hours or the early morning hours. But if it is left unmanaged, so in the evening hours, we see there is a huge rise in the load, the encircled portion. So the key takeaways from this is that distributed charging infrastructure has to be promoted, and that is what is being promoted here in Delhi. We are doing so. Time of use tariff for the electric vehicle and the DR events by the DSO, very, very important to push electric vehicle at the time of the day when the grid is more green, number one. And number two, the loading of the assets is also on a moderate side. So this is already there and we are working on refining it. For example, in Delhi, we have a single part tariff. There is no capacity charges. And also we have a TOD, but for only summer months. So we are working on it for making it 12 months a year. Integration of battery energy storage and the EV charging will boost the renewable energy based charging and prevent DT overloading. So this we are already implementing, and we hope that one part of it is on the ground next month. Home charging would be under the ambit of the utility-led DR. So this is what we are commencing. In fact, it commenced yesterday with the announcement by the government of Delhi. And this is going to be reality we expect within the next 2 months. Any delight can order a EV connection along EV charging connection along with the EV metered connection at her home with just a call away. So this is also going to help the the DSOs to manage the load well. And time staggered charging to be promoted for effective utilization of the distribution transformer and promotion of the upgrade deferral. Because we want to promote the upgrade deferral, there are two reasons for it. A, we want to increase the utilization rate. Currently, the utilization rate, 80% time of the year, it is loaded only 25-30%, which is not good. It's not the complete utilization. And this is because the fact of extreme weather conditions. With that, I'll end my presentation and thank you. Over to you, Marusha.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. So insightful. You really showed how the impacts and the readiness of the grid can be actually looked into and addressed without passing the burden to the final user, which is, I think, a sentence that is worth, underlining of your presentation as well. There was also another sentence that went very fast in your first slide, but I think it's also phenomenal, which is the opportunity for electric mobility to also, hand in hand with renewable energies, to also reduce the dependency on foreign energy, that we find in some countries. I think that you were able to couple a lot of things in your presentation. So thanks a lot for that. Extremely insightful. We're going to continue our journey, and now we're going to go to Malaysia. And we're going to go to Malaysia thanks to Mod Sharul Nisam bin Sarip, who is the Chief Technology Officer of the Malaysia Automotive Robotics and Internet of Things Institute. And Sharul is going to tell us a bit about the e-mobility developments in Malaysia in general, isn't it? So Sharul, over to you, please.
All right, thank you very much, Marusha. So first of all, on behalf of Malaysia government, we would like to appreciate the organizer for inviting us to be part of this conference. Maybe Sanjini, next slide, please. Okay, in Malaysia, Malaysia government is fully believe that the policy direction and also the strategy is very, very important for our industry to look into in order to prepare for the mobility development in Malaysia. Therefore, Malaysia government has introduced two main policies and one master blueprint to assist the development of e-mobility in Malaysia. The first policy will be the National Transport Policy, which consists of 5 policy thrusts and 23 strategies. And the policy is about to develop the whole transportation system, covering the economic competitiveness, social element, and environmental protection. So this policy is under the purview of Ministry of Transport. Next slide, please. To further develop the integration of the ecosystem in Malaysia, Ministry of Works also launched the Master Blueprint of Intelligent Transportation System. So this covering the 9 ITS sectors from coming from roadsides, vehicle, travelers, and centers integration, especially in the area of e-mobility. Next slide, please. To further develop the automotive industry, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry via MARI has launched the National Automotive Policy. So this policy emphasizing of the whole e-mobility development, especially the manufacturing development, as well as the integration with the whole ecosystem. So this policy is about to promote the Industrial Revolution 4.0 technology to be incorporated into the automotive industry. Next slide, please. To further implement the e-mobility development in Malaysia, MITI via MARI has introduced the 7 blueprint and also roadmaps covering the technology, the aftermarkets, the talent development, as well as the whole ecosystem to realize the vision of connected mobility by year 2030. Next slide, please. Malaysia government already identified the major components to further develop the electric vehicle development, covering the inverter, electric motor, battery management system, onboard charger, charge port, as well as the battery, to further promote the ecosystem development, and government is subsidizing all the localization of these components in Malaysia. So we also identified the benefits, the key benefit of e-mobility to be used in Malaysia as compared to the conventional powertrain system, such as internal combustion engine. Next slide, please. For that reason, the National Automotive Policy 2020 has laid out the several incentives which covering the full exemption of indirect tax from import and excise duty, and also to further promote the assembly of electric vehicles, covering the full exemption of corporate tax, the promotion of critical component development, and also to attract more investment into Malaysia. Next slide, please. We also has aligned and also harmonized the international regulations with regards to the electric vehicles, covering the passenger car, electric motorcycle, as well as bicycle, and not to forget the adoption of ISO standards with regards to the battery and chargers. Next slide, please. As the electric vehicle stock in Malaysia, it is covering around, it was recorded around 2,767, and the plug-in hybrid and hybrid recorded more than 45,000 units as at March 2021. So from this number, 87% is coming from motorcycle. Apart from that, we also have rolled out several R&D projects under MARI, and also the pilot projects with the assistance from the government. Next slide, please. With regards to the public installation EV chargers in Malaysia, we have recorded 326 charging stations, and 223 available for public. And based on this calculation, the carbon sequestered by tree was recorded more than 31,000 trees per year. Next slide, please. As for the EV ecosystem in Malaysia, we're also covering the future direction. Next slide, please. It is include to consider the well-to-wheel calculation to further promote the electric vehicle development. So currently, our government has tried to shift the power plant generation based on the exhaust emission base, for example, coal and so on, to be renewed, to be shifted to the renewable energy resources such as solar and also hydro. Apart from that, we also will be developing the Electric Vehicle Interoperability Center to assist the whole integration of electric vehicle with the whole ecosystem. Thanks. Next slide, please. This is the overview of EVIC that will be linked the charging station, vehicles, and also power generation. And the smart grid integration will give the direction to the government to further promote the e-mobility in Malaysia. Next slide, please. We also will be developing or establishing the EVIC testbed in Malaysia to ensure the safety and also the level of environmental protection coming from the soon to be introduced electric vehicle in Malaysia, and it will be located in Cyberjaya. Next slide, please. And we have performed several benchmarking study globally, especially the National Renewable Energy Laboratory from US, and this will be the overview that will be established in Malaysia. Next slide, please. And we're working with ASEAN member states to make sure that EVIC can become the benchmark for ASEAN to further discuss about the technicalities and also to protect the safety of e-mobility in ASEAN. Next slide, please. We also already established the ASEAN Consultative Committee Standards and Quality to make sure the harmonization of e-mobility in ASEAN. Next slide, please. And based on the direction, we have made reference to the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations to be adopted into ASEAN regulations, and it will be harmonized within ASEAN member states. Okay, next slides. With that, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Misha.
Thank you so very much. Super interesting insights as well. And I could retain perhaps a few entry points that I think were fascinating. The importance of policy frameworks, isn't it? And how you showed the different interconnected elements that need to come together, the transport, the infrastructure, the skills, the automotive aspect, how it all speaks about different departments of governments needing to work together in horizontal coordination, and also how it speaks about the long-term vision, isn't it, that the public sector needs to have. I also found very interesting that you put the emphasis on the fiscality, that is not just the policy framework, but it's also looking at the fiscal regimes with the incentives that are associated. And last but not least, I would like to underscore that ecosystemic approach and vision that you really shared. Again, different departments working together, but also working at the international level in your region with the ASEAN nations, all the public and private partnerships that are so essential to bring these policy frameworks to fruition. So congratulations and thanks very much for this very detailed expose. We're going to go to our last country visit. It's not our last speaker though, and we're going to do that with Dr. Shayla Napoleon, who is the Assistant Secretary on the Department of Transportation of the Philippines. Dr. Napoleon, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Marusha. Good evening, everybody, from a truly warm Philippines, product of climate change. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to contextualize the Philippine situation as far as transport is concerned. The Philippines reflect the trend of high urban population that has been articulated by the United Nations. In 2015, about 51.2% of our population reside in urban areas. What does that mean? This means that we have increased need for mobility, hence high motorization rate. This high motorization is reflected in the GHG emission. Next slide, please. From the transport sector. All right. In 2016, the transport sector was the third largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions, second only, well, third to agriculture and energy. And so if the trend continues, by 2040, we would see that the road sector would constitute something like 156 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emission. So therefore, mindful of this huge contribution of the transport sector, the Department of Transportation, through the Climate Change Commission, submitted its nationally determined contributions in 2018. Next slide, please. And if you look at it, 3 out of the 4 interventions that we submitted for our unconditional mitigation options are really on public transportation, because this actually reflects the underlying understanding that with increased population in your urban centers, relying on private vehicle is no longer sustainable. Hence, efforts are actually geared towards improvement of public transportation. In the nationally determined contribution that the department has submitted, we looked at how to improve transport fleet technology, as well as shifting of passengers from lower capacity to higher capacity. Of particular interest, because this is where I would anchor my sharing this evening, is the next slide, please. Next slide, please. is a public utility vehicle modernization program. This is actually a key program of the department, which looks at how to improve public transportation. Now, one of its components is actually fleet modernization. In fleet modernization, we look at how to improve fuel efficiency. So like, for instance, if anybody has been to the Philippines, you would know that most of our jeepneys are considered to be Euro 0. So in the public utility vehicle modernization program, we look at how GHG would be reduced when we improve the technology of our jeepneys. The other component, though, that I'd like to emphasize under the PUV modernization is, apart from the environmental reduction of environmental impact, is also the redesigning of our fleet so that it also would address accessibility concerns. Like, most of our jeepneys have really high step board, and the entrances are at the back of the vehicle. So under the fleet modernization, under the PUVMP, the doors are now placed on the side, and the step boards are really now lower. This will now address concerns for persons with disability and people, elderly people also. Next slide, please. Now, part of the PUVMP is also the inclusion, the lodging of the development of the local public transportation route plan with a local government unit. Under this mechanism, the local governments are encouraged to identify what we call green routes. And also, when we have to develop green routes, where this will be thoroughfares for transport and mobility options, particularly including electric vehicles. Unfortunately, what you have on the side is really, as of 2019, this is just how many vehicles we have, right? But we have a lot of e-tricycles, and based on the data from the Department of Energy, about 3,000 e-tricycles have been given to the local government unit. The good news, though, is that during the pandemic, about 1,640 of these e-trikes have been used for frontliners. Next, please. So the enabling environment would include the passing of this Electric Vehicles and Charging Stations Act, which looks at which spouses the putting together a comprehensive roadmap on electric vehicles, installation of charging stations across the Philippines, and which requires 5% of government and corporate fleets to be made up of EVs within the framework of the CRED, as well as a generation of EV demand by creating green routes. Next, please. The government is also undertaking a low-carbon urban transport project, which looks at particularly how private sector participation and investment in low-carbon transport systems can be promoted. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are the critical factors. Slide before this. The critical factors. Critical factors. The critical factors for increasing convergence to e-mobility is, of course, the integration of public transportation in the public transportation plan, the green routes, implementation of policies such as the SB 1CA2 and other EV-related legislation, and increased participation and investment of private sector. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Natalian. Another set of insightful experiences from the Philippines in this case, and you have given us the opportunity of understanding the importance of a nationally determined contribution submitted by a country in the framework of the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, how essential it is that we take advantage of these framework documents to really have a clear transport dimension in them with clear targets from Slowcat, we have the opportunity of assessing the different nationally determined contributions that are shared by countries. And we can certainly say that it's not always that a country goes into that specificity as the Philippines has gone, absolutely. And then also very interesting to see how you are taking the approach of like the state setting the example, isn't it, through the public utility vehicle modernization program. So thanks very much indeed, much appreciated. And now I'm conscious of time, but I'm also conscious that we have a phenomenal speaker, Glinda Vatan, who is the Deputy Executive Director for Clean Air Asia. And Glinda, from the top of the excellent work that Clean Air Asia is doing really across the region, and also from her own experience in shaping and supporting policy and legislation in the region, she has a lot to share here. So Glinda, over to you, please, to give us a bit of a notion of this power of policies for e-mobility in Asia. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Marusha, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all. Today, I'm going to speak about exactly that, policies for e-mobility and clean power in Southeast Asia. For those of you who may not know about Clean Air Asia, we're an international NGO leading the mission for clean air in Asia, established in 2001, working with all of you, cities, countries, academia, NGOs, and development agencies for clean air and a stabilized climate. Next slide, please. So last year, Clean Air Asia, together with UNEP, published a policy brief on the role of policymaking in mainstreaming electric mobility in Asia. And the focus of the paper was really Southeast Asia, because it is the 6th largest vehicle market, with 62 million passenger light-duty vehicles expected by 2040, and 20,000 premature deaths estimated from transportation emissions, and 28% of total energy related CO2 emissions coming from transportation. And in this paper, we found out through the desk research that there are certain barriers to e-mobility uptake in the region, and these are the high upfront purchase cost, lack of infrastructure, particularly charging infrastructure, and still doubts on the reliability of the technology of electric vehicles. Next slide, please. And so in this paper, we found that after looking at all of the different policies, we focused on one aspect, which is fiscal incentives. What we found out is that there has been a very heavy focus among the countries in the region on supply side incentives. So these are incentives that are meant for manufacturers, to encourage manufacturers to set up manufacturing of electric vehicles in the different countries. And what's interesting is that many of these of the Southeast Asian countries require local content requirements as a precondition to be able to gain all of the fiscal incentives. So to give an example, Indonesia, for two-wheeled electric vehicles manufacturing, you can gain all of the subsidies if you have at least 40% of the parts from Indonesia, starting from 2023, and at least 80% from 2026. So a lot of localization requirements in order to get the fiscal incentives. And we found out that electric vehicles remain expensive because of the limited number of models, taxes, and the lack of subsidies. So there was a study that showed that in Thailand, in 2016, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles were cost about $65,000 US dollars in 2019. But in 2019, when there were more models, 10 models in the market, the newest electric vehicle was priced at much lower at $39,000 US dollars. And we understand that for this region, providing subsidies for electric vehicles will require significant investment. And so there is a great need for innovative ways to raise funds. And we have some speakers from India here, so it would be great to know more about how the Delhi Air Ambience Fund is doing, because based on this example, a certain percentage coming from a fuel tax is being used to subsidize purchase of electric vehicles. Next slide, please. And interesting is that even without subsidies or together with other policies encouraging with fiscal incentives, fuel economy regulations themselves can increase electric vehicle adoption. So for countries where there may not be a lot of resources for purchase subsidies, this could be one of the policies that could be considered. And interestingly, while some countries have provided some incentives, preferential taxation incentives for electric vehicles, what happens on the ground can be, the reality may not reflect what the intent of the law actually states. So the interpretation by the tax and customs offices of the fiscal incentives sometimes pose challenges to availing of the incentives. An example here is in Vietnam, there was a special consumption tax where imported hybrid cars were unable to avail of the reduced tax. And in the Philippines, early in the implementation of the new comprehensive tax reform law, which had exempted all EVs from excise tax, there were still reports that an electric sedan, for example, was charged 30% excise tax in 2018. Next slide, please. And when we speak of cleaning up the power, the electricity that powers electric vehicles, we look towards the electricity generation or the energy mix in the region, and this region is considered the last frontier of coal, because there are many coal-fired power plants still in the pipeline. But we are encouraged by the coal moratoria that is being that has been announced by several countries. But interestingly, the existing and the new coal-fired power plants are still allowed to emit such huge quantities of emissions compared to the best practice standards. So you can see here how the region, some countries in the region compare with China and India. So this is a cleaning up of these coal-fired power plants is really needed. Next slide, please. And so putting it all together, as countries transition to electric mobility, it is important that the electricity used to power these EVs comes from clean sources. And among the policy responses needed is the tightening of emission standards for coal-fired power plants as countries transition to renewable energy and prioritize renewable energy for electricity. Next slide, please. So these are just some concluding thoughts. Basically, the two major opportunities for Asia's energy transition are really mainstreaming EVs and transitioning to cleaner power generation. Thank you so much, and over to you, Marusha.
Thank you so much, Linda. Very much appreciated. I know that being the last speaker is always a challenge, but as usual, you've added so much value, and you made very clear some of the key constraints that we face around the fiscality regimes, isn't it? And how essential it is to look into them. And that ongoing notion of what do we do until we phase out fossil fuels one day, hopefully soon, isn't it? What is it that we have to do in the meanwhile? I am very conscious of time and conscious of the fact that we want to preserve a bit of time, of course, for interaction with our participants. Before we do so, let's go with the original plan of having a bit of a discussion amongst the panel. And I wanted to provoke some thoughts to each of you with some questions. I'm going to ask you, please, fellow panelists, to be really strict with timekeeping. If you could please respond like in 2 minutes maximum, each of you, and that way then we can pass it back to Sanjini so we can interact with our audience. Let me start perhaps with Kali again. Let's follow the same order we had initially. Kali, I mean, you've really underscored that notion of job creation, isn't it? And the skills that go with it. Which of these anticipated jobs in the value chain of electric mobility you think are likely to be outsourced? And which ones do you think are most likely to stay at home domestically?
That's a good question. I would imagine, so looking at the large job segments on that pie chart that I presented, I would assume that the battery manufacturing would probably be outsourced, just because, you know, there are such economies of scale that, you know, right now Japan, China, and the US are kind of dominating the battery manufacturing. But the majority of those jobs, remember there was 40-some% are from the electric vehicle mechanics. There's 11% from EVSE, like charger installations. There were quite a few for grid upgrades. Like those cannot be outsourced. Those are all going to be domestic jobs. So I would say of that pie chart, I think it was probably 3/4 would be domestic.
That is super interesting. It really reinforces the notion of a net creation of domestic jobs as well, isn't it? And we haven't spoken here about recycling the batteries, isn't it? Because of course there is an element of producing them, but there's also the end of the life of those batteries, secondhand, and also the very end disposal. Is that a market as well for domestic job creation instead of perhaps exporting? You know, all that end of life waste that needs to be treated. And of course, there's an element of global south and global north equity here, I think. Excellent. Thanks very much. And Abhishek, I mean, I think that you really showed us that to the extent to which renewables and electrification of transport needs to go hand in hand. Let me try to contextualize it in this moment of recovery packages post-pandemia, isn't it? And the extent to which we would really it's an imperative that those packages are about sustainable, equitable, green recovery. And what do you think is going to take to unleash this combination of renewables and transport electrification towards this paradigm of recovery? Elements like the Delhi Air Ambience Fund that Glinda was talking about, I was curious about, are going to be part of it? What do you think are going to be the key elements of that right type of recovery, please? Abhishek, I think you're on mute. Let's see if we can hear you now. I think you're still on mute, at least for me. Abhishek is on mute. I don't know if for the rest of the panel. Now you're back.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I was not able to unmute. Yeah, so you talk about the Delhi Air Ambience Fund. Yes, there is a Delhi Air Ambience Fund, which is being utilized by the government of Delhi for two purposes. A, it's about promoting green mobility. So what do you mean by green mobility? Mostly battery energy electric vehicle, BEVs, and also the hydrogen vehicles. Second, they are trying to fund the entire value chain. So there are existing IC engine vehicles, they need to be scrapped. So people need to be motivated to come forward and exchange the vehicles with a new cleaner version of the vehicles. So there should be a scrapping incentive which is being allowed from the same fund. There is a capex subsidy on the vehicles, especially the two-wheelers. The government of India recently, they have hiked the subsidy available for a two-wheeler from under the FAME 2 policy. That came in, I think, 3 days back, which is a good motivator for a mass rapid system like two-wheeler. Third is they are providing capex subsidy for the electric vehicle charger. So for example, yesterday we have launched a scheme where in Indian terms, 6,000 rupee would be the charging subsidy, the charger subsidy provided per charger point from that Delhi Clean Ambient Fund to whosoever is opting for purchasing that. Now, the cost of the charger we discovered happily was less than 6,000. So effectively, the people are going to get it for free. And you install it at your home. So the idea is to tax the polluters and pay to the green people. So this is the way the government is utilizing the funds money.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so very much. I know we are racing against the clock, so I'm going to try to get a bit more from Sharul. We've seen, I mean, I think your presentation was perfectly connected to the initial presentation by Kali talking about the different building blocks, isn't it? And how a country like Malaysia is really developing those different building blocks. From everything you've presented, come on, let me put you a bit on the spotlight. What do you think are going to be the easiest things to implement in the country? And what do you think is going to be the hardest? Let's start perhaps by the hardest and finish with the easiest. That way we finish in the positive tone here.
Okay, the hardest or the most challenges activities that we're facing right now to develop the whole comprehensive infrastructure, because it will involve a lot of investment coming from not only government and also from private sector. And apart from that, of course, the market acceptance, the range anxiety of the users. So these are the most challenges that we are facing right now. The easiest that we can implement is that maybe the lead by example. For example, in Malaysia right now, we are talking about to ensure that 50% of the government fleet will be leveraging on the EV technology. So since this is under the purview of government, so this is the easiest measures for us to further promote with this e-mobility development. Thank you.
Excellent. The power of procurement, of public procurement, isn't it? Thank you so much. Dr. Napoleon, I'm going to go to you with a question that's been floating everywhere, but that we have not addressed directly. That notion of making sure that e-vehicles are not just a luxury commodity for those who can actually afford them. So how do you think that we can incorporate a notion of equity as a top priority in this long-term transition towards e-mobility across different modes? What would be your tips there?
That's a tough question, Marusha.
I know.
If you remember, I had a slide which looked at the vehicles, the e-vehicles that we have in the Philippines. And so if you look at it, we have a lot of trikes. So I was actually thinking, for us to have a higher uptake for e-vehicle, for e-mobility, we will start with the public transportation sector, right? Because that's why we also, like in the Philippines, more than 70, modal split of public transportation is really 70%. And I'd like to dovetail that, yes. So we're good that way, except that our public transportation still needs to be improved a lot. But then I'd tie it, we would like to put e-vehicle, we have a lot of efforts for e-mobility in the public transport sector. I guess because that's also where government has a lot of, can regulate it now. And so that's why we have green rounds. But the other thing also is because of these e-vehicles, we are now able to tie it with equitable transportation. So it's not, it's not just, I'd like to say, it's not just that only rich people can ride environment-friendly vehicles. But if we put that in public transportation, we're now able to make that accessible to even those across social and economic spectrum. So I think our greatest challenge as well as potential would have to be in the public transport sector.
Excellent. So public transport is the backbone of an equitable mobility system, isn't it? Phenomenal. Thanks a lot, Dr. Napoleon. Glinda, I mean, I know that you've really worked with cities and different government departments, helping them deploy EV strategies. And there's some challenges really that need to be addressed. Perhaps one of them as well being that perfect combination of public and private roles, isn't it? Public sector and private sector roles. What can you tell us about the key roles that you think the private sector should be, taking up and delivering?
Great question, Marusha. And indeed, the scaling up of electric mobility requires that these two very big groups, important groups, the public sector, so government, and private sector coming to work together. So for the public sector, I think their roles are very much quite clear. It's putting the regulatory framework in place so that the electric vehicles, when they are on the ground, are able to register themselves for use on roads. And so it's this registration, in fact, these registration requirements, which are very basic for needs for electric mobility, still needs to be threshed out in several countries in this region. And it is these putting in place of all these enabling policies, the enabling environment that's going to encourage the private sector to make available all of the electric vehicles that the market that we need to clean up the transportation fleet. And so this partnership is really key to mainstream electric mobility in this region.
Excellent. The notion of enabling frameworks that the public sector can put in place in order to really generate that private sector work. Great. I mean, Sanjini, I know we have to stop. I wish I could really continue the panel discussion. At least I hear from you that we can continue. What I was going to do is pass it back to you. If we were in a room, you know, in an in-person meeting, we would be right now giving a big hand to this phenomenal panel that I think has done an excellent job in trying to unpack what it actually takes to see electric mobility in a wider configuration of sustainable mobility, both for passenger and freight, really take full wings in the region. It's been really an honor to be able to share some time with you, fellow panelists. Over to Sanjini with no further ado. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Marusha, and all the panelists for a wonderful discussion. Yes, I think we are a little close on time, but we have a few questions from the audience. So I'm going to take them on. And the first question actually goes to Abhishek. And the question is, BESS will help reduce the peak load. How about the system cost impacts, counting the battery, BMS, and smart charging integration, etc.?
Sure, a very good question. So actually, we know that the battery energy storage system has multiple value stacks. And that was the focus of the study that NREL did along with the USAID, the project that we did last year. In fact, an analytical framework has been developed under the study, and that is in the public domain on NREL's website. Just to tell you, apart from the value stack where we are trying to reduce the peak load or the peak shaving, there are other value streams, for example, energy arbitrage. And even now, the government of India has floated and notified the draft ancillary services regulation, where the primary ancillary service, secondary and tertiary ancillary service are now going to be reality, where the batteries can participate. So what I'm trying to summarize is, we need to take a holistic view of the complete cost. You take about the benefits, the entire cycle, not only a specific benefit of discharging during the peak hours and integrating with the EV charger. The idea is to have a system like DERMS, a distributed energy resource management system, which is actually analyzing the rates on the real-time market, talking about the ancillaries, talking about the demand forecasting, talking about the DER, how much is getting produced, and then the right mix, which has to be scheduled, maybe something from the battery at this point in time. It could be coupled with the EV charging. So that optimizer algorithm keeps running in the back. So the good point is the battery has multiple value stacks. So we need to take a holistic view and not only a single, then only your cost benefit analysis will come to be a positive figure. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you very much for your comprehensive answer. So I think I can move on to, there's two more questions. I have another question, and this one is for Glinda. Referring to the last slide on Clean Air Asia's presentations, that's Glinda's, the energy composition is important. In Vietnam, after the boom of solar power plant last 2 years, we are reevaluating the impact to energy security. How can renewable energy and EV support each other?
Thank you very much for this question. So definitely there is a need for electric vehicles to be powered by clean energy sources, and because it has many benefits. So right now the current energy mix in this region in Southeast Asia is still very much predominantly coal, and that results in carbon emissions, but also air pollutants that affect the air pollution in cities. So we have to decarbonize and reduce the emissions from both the road transport fleet by shifting to electric mobility, and at the same time ensuring that more renewable energy is generating the electricity that powers our electric vehicles.
Thank you, Glenda. Appreciate it. The third question is actually, can ask anyone to answer this. And this goes to considerations around all members for Southeast Asian countries on how should each country position themselves as a competitive manufacturing advantage as well as e-mobility, meaning there are countries that are hubs for manufacturing vehicles for the global market. How do you balance this being a global manufacturer and wanting to advance e-mobility? Does anybody want to take that on? Cheryl, do you want to?
Yeah, maybe I can take the question from Malaysia perspective. Yeah. So in Southeast Asia, to make sure or ensure the development of e-mobility, we have strategized few action plan and also established several working groups, especially to recognize the each localization within our region. And we have signed the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, ATIGA, since year 2009. And we recognize any localization that has been made within Southeast Asia region, and to be made as to also leverage on our domestic incentive. For example, via ATIGA, any activities within Southeast Asia are entitled for up to 100% import duty. Yeah, so that's the first. Apart from that, we also complement each other in terms of safety regulations, the harmonization of standards, as well as the effort to develop the R&D facilities, especially in the area of e-mobility. For example, right now in Singapore, for example, they are very advanced in R&D. So Malaysia leverage on the Singapore capacity and also involved in the R&D development. We benchmark the activities and then adopt it as our domestic requirements. So we complement each other in terms of the product development. And as for manufacturing, we'll be recognizing any Southeast Asia localization activities, and it will be part of the regional value content calculation. So that will be perspective from Malaysia. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. And I think that's a really good answer to know that there is some learning and taking into consideration and coordination among countries in the region. So thank you for that. So I think we're down to the last few minutes. I don't see any more questions. Okay, let me quickly scroll through the chat. I think I have, yes, I don't see any more questions, but if you don't mind, I actually have one question, and that is a policy-related question for Glenda. Glenda, do you see, I think when we look through all the speakers' presentations, 2- and 3-wheelers are starting to become a mode that needs to be very strongly electrified. Are there any specific policies for these this mode that has been successful in the region?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. And well, within the region, what is clearly lacking, well, I guess you're looking for a good example, but in our study, what was really needed is to have harmonized standards, especially for 2- and 3-wheelers, that would allow local manufacturers to access the greater ASEAN market. With harmonized standards within ASEAN, any certified vehicle test center or laboratory could then perform conformity testing, eliminating the need to repeat the same testing in numerous countries. And so we have yet to see a particular market that has done this, but the good thing is ASEAN, working with UNEP, is working towards harmonizing standards for these vehicles, very important vehicles in the region.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. And over to you, Mark Dunn. I think you said you have a few comments before we wrap up. Should I say, well, maybe before I give it to you, shall I just want to say thank you again, Marusha, all the panelists and participants, the Asian Development Bank for sponsoring and hosting this event, and the USAID and their Southeast Asia Edge Hub for organizing and managing the event. So off to you, Mark.
Great, thanks, Sanjini. Thanks to all. Just a quick note, we did receive a number of requests for access to the presentations. There's a pop-up box that's just appeared on your screen, which will give you the opportunity to download the various presentations. So please do so, and you'll have access to those presentations. Secondly, when you do log out of this event, you will be directed to a end of event survey, and we request that you get the survey so we have a chance to understand what you've taken away and how we can improve this for the future. So again, thank you to all the presenters and to the attendees. Thanks for your attendance and your participation, and we look forward to seeing you over the course of the week. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take good care.
Bye-bye. Keep safe,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Marusha.
Great event, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Glenda.
Bye, Sanjini.
Bye, Abhishek.